The White Lotus returned this week with the 6th episode of Season 3, and following what was an eventful inclusion last week with us seeing Laurie and Saxon getting up close and personal, Jaclyn and Valentin spending the night together, and Timothy just in his clouded state. This episode not only tricked us in its opening moments, but I think that very scene laid down the foundation for what could potentially be on the horizon. With Rick finally making it to Khun Sritala's house and staring the man that murdered his father right in the eyes. The next episode of the show is the one that I think has the potential to go absolutely crazy. So with that, let's dive into the episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is The White Lotus Season 3 Episode 6 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Timothy Ratliff. During the opening moments of the episode, there was a section where we saw Timothy end things for himself, and it was followed by Victoria and Piper running in to see what happened. I actually thought that it was real to start with, but then we saw that it was just him thinking about doing it and realizing the devastation that it would cause. Death was a huge theme for Timothy in this episode, as not only did that happen, but we also saw him speaking with the monk at the compound, and he asked him what he thought happened once people died. The monk made out like there was no more pain, no more suffering, and that it was called a happy return. This was also paired with the monk saying that people run from pain to pleasure, only to end up finding more pain, which is exactly the situation that Timothy has found himself in his life, and it showcased that no matter what he does, he's not going to be able to outrun the situation that he's in. With the issues that Timothy has landed his family in, they're life-changing in the sense that they're going to lose their home and all of the financial stability and wealth that they have. Victoria said an interesting line in this episode where she mentioned that if they lost everything, then she didn't think that she'd want to live anymore. She wouldn't have it in her to be able to continue, and she doesn't think she ever did. As Victoria said that, there was a close-up on Timothy's face which showed that he was in deep thought about what she just said. He knows that he's lost everything for the family, and with her saying that, it made him question even more about the trouble that he's landed the family in. There was another vision that he had where he killed Victoria as she slept and then he turned the weapon on himself. This is something that I think he could well end up doing, and he could view it as ridding the family of a life of poverty and suffering. A life that he feels they might not want to live. We have to remember as well, not only is Timothy not thinking straight because of the fear and worry that he has about going to jail, but he's also dosed up on lorazepam and isn't thinking straight. Whenever we see his point of view, it's warped and blurred around the edges, so his mindset isn't in a good place at all. I'm about to discuss a clip from the trailer for the next episode, so if you want to go into the next episode with no information whatsoever, then skip to the timestamp on screen. With it also seeming like Saxon could be going to his father with his problems in the next episode and saying, if I don't have success, then I'm nothing, and I can't handle being nothing. It's just adding fuel to the fire for Timothy to want to end things for himself and his family, because without money and success for them, it doesn't seem like a life that's worth living. The only person that seems to be an exception for is Piper. We also know that Timothy would rather die than go to jail, as he said on the phone, so all fingers are pointing towards that very outcome being the case. The only thing now though is that he doesn't have the gun, as Gaitok took it back, so I'm guessing that if they go to Greg's dinner party, I imagine Greg has a weapon or two that he might end up taking or being given. Saxon Ratliff. Oh, Saxon. When we first saw Saxon, inside of his mind he was replaying the events of the evening, and he thought that Lochlan hooked up with Chloe and that he was just left on the bed dealing with himself. But in actual fact, his memory was warped due to the pill that he took, and it was actually Lochlan that was getting intimate with him. We all kind of knew that this was on the horizon following the dynamic of the brothers and Lochlan's admiration for Saxon. However, that didn't make it any less shocking when we saw Saxon come to the realization of it. We saw already that Saxon was treating Lochlan differently because of the fact that they kissed, and he knew that the dynamic had changed between them. Hence why he ignored his brother when Lochlan left. Saxon prides himself on being this alpha guy that's only interested in women, but there he was now having kissed his brother and now being intimate with him too. When Saxon, Chloe and Chelsea were discussing being with more than one person at once, he said yeah, but never with another guy. Something which showed that he wasn't interested that way at all. But with the reveal of Lochlan being involved on their boat trip, it was enough to make him feel sick. Seeing how Chloe and Chelsea viewed Saxon after that, with Chelsea saying, "Nothing would make me get with my brother," it showed the level of shame that Saxon felt, the disgust that he had, and I imagine he's going to blame his brother a lot for what happened. The vocabulary that he used surrounding them kissing by saying, "You forced us," when there was no forcing whatsoever, it showed that he's not taking any responsibility for that. When it came to what happened between Saxon and Lochlan, we know that Lochlan has been interested in his brother since the very first episode. So I do feel like Lochlan took advantage of his brother whilst in that state, and his intoxicated mind made him give in to his inhibitions. The fact that Lochlan was the one that got with Chloe and Saxon didn't, I imagine that made him feel more inferior to his brother, and that was something that bothered him too. But with what actually happened between them coming to light, Saxon and Lochlan's relationship has now changed forever. This is something that's probably going to make him mirror his father's mindset even more, in the sense that both father and son are going to be stuck within their minds and operating in isolation, holding on to a secret. We didn't see Lochlan come to the realization over what happened until he was in the monastery, where even then he looked slightly shocked at what happened that night. However, the theory around Lochlan spitting out the pill looks like it's been debunked now, as he seemed just as hungover the next day, most likely showing that he did consume it. He did say, "I can't remember anything from last night," but just to play devil's advocate, who knows? Is that a lie, and could what he did to Saxon be what he always wanted to do? I am excited to see what's going to happen with the brothers moving forward. Saxon had Lochlan under his wing and was trying to morph him into a mini version of himself. But now, I think the distance between them could grow larger, and as Saxon battles with his own mind, his actions could come across in aggression towards his brother. Laurie, Jaclyn, and Kate. Now this dynamic is truly heating up. Following Valentin leaving Jaclyn's room, Kate noticed it, and she went on to tell Laurie about Valentin staying the night, something that shook the group on its head. We know that Laurie has been interested in Valentin from the moment that she got there, and in the previous episode Jaclyn was pushing Laurie to get with Valentin, when in reality it was Jaclyn who finished the night with him. With Laurie finding out, we saw her personality change completely, and she went from being this caring friend to, in the words of Kate, being somebody that was antagonizing Jaclyn. She quite literally had no F's left to give, and she went in on Jaclyn, calling her a psycho and referring to her as an aging actress. Something that we know has been at the heart of Jaclyn's mind, as she's had this fear of being perceived as an old lady by all of those that were around her. This is what probably motivated her to get with Valentin, so she could still feel young and pretty. Laurie said to Jaclyn, "It's like what you always did. It's like what happened when we were in 10th grade. You think people can change, but here we are again." Showing that there's some deep-rooted resentment towards Jaclyn. We have seen how envious Laurie is of Kate and Jaclyn because they're more similar in lifestyle than what she was. This was made most prominent in the first episode of Season 3 when Laurie broke down and was looking at them. But now, with her being carefree and speaking her mind, almost shaming Jaclyn for being with Valentin, she might have reached breaking point with her. I've not predicted anything deadly happening amongst the trio. I just think it's going to be a friendship-ending holiday for all of them. Who knows? We know that Laurie is jealous of Jaclyn and her lifestyle, and she did say, what happens in Thailand stays in Thailand. But what if she gets set on ruining Jaclyn's life in some way as payback? This isn't only a one-time thing, clearly. Laurie bringing up 10th grade shows that it's something that happened throughout the entirety of their friendship. So could she go to a reporter and tell them what happened? Or could she maybe tell Harrison what happened the previous night and wreck her relationship? We actually heard his voice in this episode on the phone, so he's a character that's been made real and not just somebody that's back home. I think Laurie is set on bringing Jaclyn down a peg or two, and that is probably the best way for her to do that. Laurie hasn't only tarnished her relationship with Jaclyn though, she's tarnished Kate's too, as Kate was being viewed as a gossip as well. What I find funny about this dynamic is that they've all individually gossiped about the other, with the other, behind the other's back. But the moment something is direct, it's viewed as wrong and unfair, when in reality, they're all just as bad as each other. Belinda. Belinda's involvement in this episode wasn't that large, but we saw a couple of different stories being thrown her way. The first was the fact that herself and Pornchai spent the night with one another, and Zion also arrived that morning. Pornchai told Belinda how he wanted to help her set up her own spa and fulfill her dream out in Thailand. One which was met with a bit of reluctancy from Belinda as she looked over at him after he walked away. It made me question the legitimacy of his claim, and it made me wonder if he might well be looking to con her in some way. Pornchai has always come across as relatively sincere, but you never know, there could be a darker side to the character. Plus, as well as that, we saw Greg invite Belinda over to his super mansion for dinner on the night where the likes of Saxon and co were also going to be attending. She's still extremely wary of Greg, and that was shown most by the way that she jumped out of her skin when she saw him. If I were her, I definitely wouldn't go. Greg wants to shut her up because he knows that she knows the truth about him and what happened to Tanya. So she should definitely stay away, but I don't think she will. We know that Greg has something he needs to do based on what he said to Chloe, and I think that could be looking to deal with Belinda in some way. With him also knowing that the Ratliff brothers were intimate with Chloe, I wonder if he's going to do something to Belinda and then try to pin it on Saxon, almost like a two birds one stone approach. There was a scene in this episode where Gaitok was firing a weapon at the firing range, and on his final shot it transitioned to Belinda walking. So I wonder if that was foreshadowing Belinda's fate that could be on the horizon. Rick and Frank met up again in this episode, and we saw that Frank was going to be the director in Rick's fake movie that was being produced, which he wanted Khun Sritala to star in. Rick arranged to meet Khun Sritala at her home so he could get close to seeing Jim Hollinger in person, which was the whole point of the plan. He said to Frank that he wouldn't bring his weapon because he doesn't want to kill him. He just wants to confront him and tell him how he ruined his life. However, when they were getting off the boat, we saw that he had the weapon in his pocket and he lied. What is it with security in this show? You've got Gaitok, who's quite literally terrible at his job, and then Sritala's security didn't search these two strangers that were entering the home for the first time. Something that felt like a rookie mistake. There was an emphasis on bad things happening in threes again during this episode when Chelsea was on the phone to Rick, and I think something bad could well be on the horizon for him, especially with him looking set on approaching Hollinger. With regards to Rick, I think there's two scenarios. Either he kills Hollinger and doesn't get that feeling that he's been chasing, that sense of relief because the man that ruined his life is no longer around, or he ends up being killed and it'll almost shine a light on the fact that he was so set on chasing the past and looking to kill Hollinger that he didn't see what was right in front of him with Chelsea and the happy future that they could have had together. The fact that we didn't get to see Jim Hollinger was the perfect creative choice too. The camera slowly moving around Rick's face as he laid eyes on the man that murdered his father felt so intense, and you could feel the emotional weight that it held for him. So I can't wait to see how this interaction is going to unfold. My review of the episode. I thought this was a great episode of the show. It followed on from an eventful one perfectly, and it also set up a lot to go wrong in the penultimate episode next week. I thought Saxon's story was one of the most interesting to watch this week. Patrick performed the character so well, and you could really feel the disgust that he had in his mind and the fact that he felt so dirty. We're about to see a completely different side to Saxon in the way that he acts towards his brother, and I'm intrigued to see what the first interaction between the both of them is going to be like now that they've both realized what happened. With regards to Timothy, I actually don't see him returning home from Thailand now, and it looks like he could well take his family with him. The thoughts that he's having are not healthy in the slightest, and he's not getting help. In fact, these thoughts are just getting darker and darker. Most of that family's dark. You've got that with Timothy, and then you've got Lochlan with the way that he feels about his brother. So that darkness is probably only going to come to the forefront even more. Fabian is still a character that intrigues me. I don't know whether he's just awkward or if he has sinister intentions and is doing some shady work on the side. I'm yet to cast my full judgment and opinion on him yet, but after he ends up performing next week, we might learn more about him. The three girls storyline is one that I just find so entertaining to watch. There's malice, gossip, and a two-faced nature to it, but that's all I think. Seeing Kate just being in the middle during this episode showed the lost nature that she had and that all she wanted was for Laurie to just keep her mouth shut. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that dynamic will change over the coming 2 episodes. With next week's episode being the penultimate one, I'm genuinely so intrigued to see how it's going to build towards the finale. It's been one hell of a season, and I'm gutted that there's only 2 episodes left, but I've got high hopes that they'll deliver. So, there you have it, The White Lotus Season 3 Episode 6, Ending Explained. If you want to see every episode of The White Lotus Season 3 being broken down, then click on the card in the top corner, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What did you think of this episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for tuning into this week's breakdown of The White Lotus, and I'll see you in the next one.